Welcome to Love Will Love, a place where emotions meet stories. Here, we explore love, mystery, and the moments that change our lives forever. Every episode is a new journey. Are you ready to feel it? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and join us for the next story of Love Reborn. Sometimes the darkest pain leads us to the brightest love. This is the story of heartbreak, healing, and a love that changed everything. I grew up in a house shadowed by tragedy. Over 40 years, 4 suicides happened on that property. 2 were in my family, first my father, then, years later, my sister. My dad was brilliant, quick with numbers, gentle with plants, funny when he forgot to be guarded, but he couldn't carry the weight of divorce, or the way my mom turned our hurt into a wall between him and us. In 2003, when I was 13, he died by suicide. I remember the sound of the front door, the way the neighbor's porch light blinked like a tired eye, the strange quiet that follows bad news as if the world itself is holding its breath.
Grief at 13 is messy. It doesn't come in waves. It arrives like weather that never clears. I made bargains with the ceiling. I'll be good, I'll be quiet, I'll get straight A's, just give him back. It didn't work. The house felt larger and colder.
The staircase creaked differently, as though it, too, missed his step. My sister, older by 3 years, tightened her jaw and decided that perfection was the shield that would keep us safe. She color-coded her life, measured her days and achievements, and cut her mistakes into pieces so small you couldn't see them. She was terrified of becoming him, and fear is a terrible life coach. 4 years later, when I was 17, she died by suicide as well. I can still hear the silence afterward, the heavy, dirt-thick kind of silence that even clocks won't tick through. I blamed myself for being too young to help my dad, for being too lost to help my sister. I drew a line through my own softness and replaced it with a schedule. Science major, pre-med, labs and lectures, practice questions and flashcards until the words blurred. I told myself purpose could outrun pain. At night, purpose lost. I lay awake listening to my heart, wondering if it could run out of beats from overwork and worry. I taught myself how to not need. I told myself I didn't deserve happiness. I was here to atone. Then, in the bleakest part of my college fall the week before finals, when the library looked like a refugee camp of highlighters and cold pizza, I met her. She sat alone in the campus coffee shop, a cup warming her hands, gaze fixed out the window, like she was watching a storm only she could see. A friend whispered he had a crush on her, so I told myself to stay back. But something about her pulled me in, something strong that hid a fissure, like ice under winter sun. We spoke the way two guarded people do at first. Circling, she was wary. Her parents' marriage had been a long corridor of slammed doors. She had just survived a brutal fight with cancer. You could feel the distance she kept, the space she used to stay safe. But then she laughed softly, as if it had been a Wyland. The air changed. The conversation slipped from small talk into the quiet honesty of 2 people who have already broken and have nothing to sell. I don't know why I said what I said next. Maybe grief teaches you when truth matters. Maybe love doesn't wait for permission. You know, I told her, in the past I would have waited. I would have tested you, been cautious, held back. But not this time. I'm going to trust you completely. Because I think you're the woman I'm going to marry. The words surprised me, but they fit my mouth like they'd been waiting there. She held my eyes like you hold a fragile, think, full, deciding. Then she smiled, the kind that warms a room, and whispered, I was thinking the same thing. We were inseparable after that, but not in a loud, fireworks way. It was steady, sure. She told me she believed we'd been together in another life. For the first time, the idea that souls recognize each other felt less like poetry and more like memory. With her, I learned what true love means. It isn't perfect. It doesn't Photoshop out the scars. It sees them, traces them, and says, I'll love you here, too. We were both the kind of people who checked the exits in every room. But together, we learned to sit, to stay, to breathe. Even with finals looming, that semester became the best of my life. I really slept for the first time in years. I worked harder, but it felt lighter. She was a reason, not a distraction. When winter break came, she flew to the West Coast to see family. The distance put time zones between us, but not space. We texted until our thumbs ached and drifted off on video calls we were both too stubborn to end. She'd send me photos of orange trees and ocean light. I'd send her the way snow turned campus into a sketchbook. Even silence felt like a conversation when it was with her. Then the cough started. At first she joked about it. Flight air, dry heat. Then it deepened. She stopped finishing sentences. She flew back early, despite the fever. I met her at the airport, and the smile she gave me was brave and small. I carried her bag, and then, when the walk stretched longer than it should have, I carried her. In my apartment, I tucked her into bed, counted her breaths, learned the music of worry. We went to the hospital together. The fluorescent lights hummed. The doctor said words that reorganized my world. Metastatic tumor, collapsing her lung. She did not flinch. Even in a gown that never closes properly, with a plastic bracelet tagging her wrist like luggage, she was the bravest person I have ever known. She teased the nurses, asked me to describe the sunrise like it was a class I could pass for her. She taped a note to the four-pole that read, "This is temporary. I am not." We did chemo. We lived in the spaces chemo left. On good days, we hiked short trails and stopped often. On bad days, we watched our favorite movie and held hands like the world was flooding and our fingers were a raft. There are parts of that season I don't remember. Well, shock wraps memory in fog, but I remember small things. The lemon popsicles that made her smile. The way she tucked her knees up when she slept. The nurse who braided her hair before it began to fall. The patient down the hall who sang off-key on purpose just to make the ward laugh. We built a life from minutes and made it feel like years. Love is stronger than many things, but bodies are honest. The tumor grew. It took space that was not its own. Breath became effort. Conversations became pauses between breaths. We didn't dwell on miracles. We built them. One morning, she gripped my hand so tightly I felt the anchor of her. "Promise me," she said, "that you won't turn your grief into punishment. Promise me you'll turn it into love." I promised and meant it with every cell I had. She died at 21. There is no sentence that can carry the weight of that. The hardest thing I have ever done was to slide her engagement ring from her finger. Not because love had ended, but because ritual sometimes asks too much of the living. I held the ring in my palm and thought, this is too small to hold all of this. And yet, somehow, it did. People think stories end there. They don't. Grief is a new country. You learn the language by speaking it badly for a while. In the months after, I kept our routines where I could. On Thursdays, I walked the short trail we loved, leaving room for her on the bench out of habit. I kept her note from the four-pole in my wallet. I finished the semester, slowly. I allowed myself to be helped, which is its own kind of courage. On the worst days, I read her words, everything temporary. I am not tanned, remembered that the story she asked me to write was not about endings, but about how love changes the way we live. I carry her with me, not as a wound that won't close, but as a seam that holds. She taught me how to recognize joy without apologizing for it. She taught me that being brave doesn't mean being unafraid. It means loving with the lights on anyway. She made me stronger, yes, but not in the brittle way I once thought strength looked. Strong like water, able to move around obstacles, to wear down stone, to reflect light I didn't know I had. There's a photo on my desk. We took it in the hospital courtyard on a warm day when winter forgot itself. She's wearing a silly knit beanie. I'm squinting because she made me laugh. Behind us, there is a tree just beginning to bud, a promise in progress. Sometimes I think that is what love is, a promise in progress. It doesn't guarantee a length, it teaches a depth. Some love stories stretch for decades. Ours didn't. But in the space we had, we stacked meaning to the ceiling. If you're listening to this while carrying something heavy, this is what I learned. Pain doesn't get the last word unless you hand it the pen. The pen belongs to love. Love can live in a hospital room. Love can live in a coffee shop where a stranger becomes a sentence you've been trying to write. Love can live in the way friends show up unasked, in the way doctors speak gently, in the way a night sky keeps making room for stars. Love can live in memory without turning you to stone. Love can be a future you build in the name of someone who showed you how. Sometimes, even now, I wake at 2 a.m. and reach for my phone out of old habit, expecting her text, "You up?" I don't push the ache away. I let it sit beside me. Then I make tea, the way she liked it, with honey that tastes like summer. And I write about her, about us, about the ways grief and gratitude braid together until you can't tell where one ends. I keep the promise. I turn what hurts into something that can hold someone else. Our love was real, fierce, true. It did not fail because it did not last. It succeeded because it changed me. It changed the way I show up for the people I love now. It changed the career I chose, and the patience I sit beside, and the silence I am not afraid to share. It changed the way I talk to 13-year-old me and tell him none of this was his fault. It changed the way I see 21-year-old her, not as a life cut short, but as a life that burned bright and honest and handed me a torch. If this story finds you in a hard season, let it say this: even in tragedy, love can find you teach you who you are. It might not arrive with trumpets. It might sit across from you in a coffee shop, holding a warm cup, trying to pretend she isn't scared. It might ask you to say the truest thing you know and to mean it. It might ask you to carry a ring, a note, a memory, and to make them into a map. It might ask you to keep living in a way that turns pain toward the light. This is not only a story about loss. It is a story about what love makes possible when we think nothing is. It is the way a hand feels in yours during chemo. It is the way a promise made in a hospital room can outlast the room, the building, the year. It is the way grief becomes less about missing and more about honoring. It is the way a house once shadowed by tragedy can learn, slowly, to open its windows again. Sometimes the darkest pain leads us to the brightest love. And sometimes a love that does not last a lifetime still changes your life forever. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Love has many faces. Which one will we discover next?